All right. Good morning. Good morning. We're back. Episode 41, Bitcoin Q&A. By the way, feel free to ask any of your questions about Bitcoin or Nostr in the chat here, whether on Zap.stream, YouTube. You can write in from the podcast or on Twitter. We're happy to answer them. How you feeling today, Q?
Tired, but we're rich, so can't really complain.
Yeah, what are you going to do now that Bitcoin's, set us free, financially self-sovereign? What are you going to do with your newfound freedom here at 44K?
Clearly, I didn't wake up and tell my boss to go fuck himself because I still showed up today. No, I mean, look, I kind of went on this rant with you a little bit this morning, but if we're being really, really honest, just you and I talking with a bunch of people eavesdropping elsewhere. I also realized my mic isn't plugged in. Probably not changing a whole lot right now, but that's just me. You do you, spend stack. I'm gonna politely and kindly start buying your Bitcoin from you if you're selling right here.
Yeah, my thoughts aren't on selling, but I am thinking more and more about what do I want to do? What is the what contributions to Bitcoin and Nostr can I realistically make? How do I want to spend my time? Like, just imagine that Bitcoin does even half of these projections. I think it's fair to say most people are projecting like a 5 to 10x for this cycle. I don't know about that. Scares me. That's like the end of cheap Bitcoin. It's still worth it at that price if you're going, $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 per Bitcoin. I'm still a buyer, but it does change the dynamic of work. It's like, okay, yeah, what do we want to do with our time? And I'm thinking more broadly about the ecosystem. Just there's going to be people, if we hit those prices, whose lives are completely going to change from just 2020. I mean, new market entrants who might even barely understand Bitcoin are going to find themselves with life-changing money. And it's not retire forever, sell your stack and ride off into the sunset. I mean, surely some people will be doing that, but just in general, that freedom affords you more choices as a person. So I think it's important to consider, like, we are fans of planning long-term, low time preference. Like, what is it that you want to do with your time, and how do you want to contribute to this space? Keeps me up at night,
Yeah, I think find your purpose. Understand that, like, I was listening to something. Oh, I was listening to Tucker Carlson on the All In podcast, and they were kind of talking about how, like, the worst thing
It's a
happened
good
to
show,
people. Huh? I mean, I guess some episodes are good, but the interesting thing that they were kind of talking about was the fact that the worst thing that they consistently found amongst their friends and sort of peers is success leads to the biggest sort of demise in people. You reach all the heights you wanted, you get everything, and then it's like, oh, it's still pretty empty, and people drink themselves to death or start using drugs and stuff. Make sure you know what you're going to do with your free time, because I'm telling you right now, if all you're going to do is smoke a shit ton of weed and watch TV all day, like, you're going to hate your life.
Yeah, I think there's a slight distinction here too. Like, there's kind of a new class of people emerging. Like, I'm calling them the proof of work class. Like, these are the Bitcoiners, like probably a lot of blue collar people, maybe, people who started businesses, products and services that are going to find that just that little bit of extra Bitcoin goes, I mean, it's going to carry them for years. So my question is, what do they do versus we've talked about, and this was on that show you mentioned as well, this large transfer of wealth that's just inheritance that's landing in the hands of like the most fiat proof of stake people in existence. And those people, I think their wealth will dissipate very, very quickly. That's just the way historically humans have behaved. It's hard to preserve wealth over generations. This is the narrative arc of, every good fiction stories. It's just like the demise of households. But But we're going the opposite direction. And if the demand for Bitcoin continues to rise, I think we can plan further out as people, and as people live longer, it's just going to get very interesting in the future here. And as the amount of, like, I guess, or even like manual data entry, like computers type jobs are priced out by AI, I think people will find themselves increasingly in a position that they might not be comfortable with. I think a lot of people didn't grow up learning how to learn things and just pursuing their interests. Rather, they follow like this rote kind of educational fiat path that doesn't lead to a lot of fulfillment and doesn't encourage a lot of like curiosity or exploration of your interests. I mean, so that's what we're up against. You don't want to take it all as leisure. Like, humans are like dogs in that way. We're not very fulfilled if we don't have a task, at least in my experience. If we don't have some kind of goal, I mean, we're workhorses. Like, we need that to drive us and to wake up every day and get after something. So the question I'm asking is, what is that something? It's not how are you gonna spend your Bitcoin. It's what are you going to do? Like, what is your legacy? Like, what are you going to do with your time? If you can live ideally, a lot of people are going to come into new circumstances where they can choose what they want to do with their time. What are you going to do? I don't know. For myself, I guess, to answer that question for myself, like, I want to start
no
a
one else is here.
homestead. No one else is here. Yeah, it's just me and you, bro. I want to start a homestead. I want to find a way to contribute to like the education of people, to help them become more self-sovereign and free themselves from the surveillance state to whatever extent possible, but also just realize how many options and different modes of living there are and try them all on and see what you like. You know what I mean? You want at least I want the broadest human experience possible. So that means kind of going out and exploring, basically. But leading questions for the day, Q?
No, I pulled some questions off of this Kitco article of like, essentially it was titled 4 Bitcoin predictions for 2023. I thought it would be interesting. We're in December. I want to read you the question, give you their answer, and we're going to change it for 2024. Okay. So honestly, I was impressed with this one. Where is Bitcoin expected to trade by June and by the end of 2023? And they said around 22,000 in June, accurate, and around 40,000 by the end of the year, accurate.
Wow. Chart boys in disbelief. Somebody correctly predicted 2 very broad price movements. Cool. And so we're turning around for 2024.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, despite, Dan Held's call for a super cycle, that's not how psychology or money work. Like, it's not everything rises forever. Maybe on a long enough time scale, but we're gonna come back down from here on some scale. Like, we're gonna crash. It's not straight up into the right to 100K. I mean, maybe it is. Bitcoin takes the path of most pain. That would certainly be painful and euphoric, but eventually people start selling. That's just what happens. I don't know. For me, it's not very important as long as you prepare yourself psychologically. And I've had a hard time even coming to terms with this price action. Like, it's stunning. It's shocking. I mean, it's weird to be so right. we've spent most of my life with like no money, so it's just, I don't know. It's just like an existential question. It's not about the accuracy of the predictions or what price point specifically. It's just like, the more important thing to me is, where are you choosing to get your Bitcoin and what are you choosing to do with it? And do you have enough market choices to and competition out there to fulfill your use cases, right? Like, are there enough no KYC outlets for you? You know, are there enough quick on ramps that aren't going to go down? But the most important thing is, where are you going to keep this? Like, how are you going to alleviate third party risk? And that question can go as deep as you want it to. Like, if you're renting an apartment in the middle of a huge city and you're just sitting on this huge stack, like, to me, that's super dangerous. I think like custodying Bitcoin at your house is like begging for an attack, and it sounds paranoid and like kind of pessimistic, but these things do happen. Unfortunately, I think there's over 200 cases of kind of like assaults on Bitcoiners and crypto people specifically for their cryptocurrency. So I maintain that, you know, they're going to come after us eventually. You got to plan for that inevitability. You got to think adversarially. I'm getting kind of off the track of your question here. I don't really want to be tied down to a specific price prediction. So my thesis maintains, yes, we're in a bull market. We've been up 100, probably 60% at this point, year to date, which is beautiful. But I'm more interested in what happens after the halving. I think those mechanics are still in play. I think it's probably a little bit sooner from the ETF, but I'll stand by 6 to 18 months. You're going to see an all-time high. What's interesting is a lot of the new class of Bitcoiners, and by that I always mean like 2020 and beyond, like a lot of them have told me they couldn't take the pain from the last drawdown, and they're definitely going to take profits this time. And that scares me because you're never taking profits in the fiat realm. You're just choosing to hold a riskier, basically like a lending security. Yeah, if it's not in Bitcoin, I mean, have you really locked it down? If it's not cold storage, I mean, you're just gonna get the base, or you're gonna miss out on the opportunity to have those sats. And you know, at some point these prices run away and you don't get access to them again. Like, how amazing was it actually though to get access to 15K Bitcoin again this year? I mean, unreal.
Dude, it was the only thing I was about was I just didn't have enough cash.
Right. And that's what leads
all.
people to think, yeah, man, maybe I should have sold the top. Okay, that's easy to say in retrospect, but you didn't know. I mean, especially when we hit that double top, that was a real pump fake for people. They thought we were going to hit 70K again or 60.
Dude, I think we hit that second top right after I started at BM. And then like we spent the next 6 months convincing ourselves that the bull market wasn't over, and like it was. But we genuinely spent 6 months saying, "Oh, it's about to come back. It's about to come back. It's about to come back."
Yeah. Every podcast out there was talking about, you know, a super cycle. All your models are destroyed, and they're destroyed to the downside. We hit lows we never thought we'd see again, which is great, but also I don't know, horrible for people that made the wrong moves. So it's a good question to ask. Like, the thing that I like to ask people that are saying that is like, okay, well, what's your price target? Are you just going to trade on gut feel? Like, what are you looking at? You know, what are your priors in making these decisions? We'll see, man. What about you? What's your kind of 1.5 year plan here?
Nothing is changing.
Nothing is changing.
Business as usual. The number can 10x from here, and I'm still nothing changing. Genuinely,
the number 10x's from here, and nothing changes for you. Interesting. That's good resolve, man. So you're basically living your best life. You're right where you want to be.
Like, I've always had this conversation with friends of like, what would this is the equivalent genuinely of like, what happens if you win the lottery tomorrow? Like, what is the first thing you do when you hit the lottery? And I have always been in the camp of, if I win the lottery, I show up till
no
tomorrow.
one.
Exactly. Like it's not a like, oh my God, I'm gonna work the rest of my life. It's a I'm gonna slowly and steadily start getting affairs in order. I might make certain changes to lifestyle and such. But like I kind of told you, there's a line, there's a number that I needed to get to that is more than 10x for me to start. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna work anymore, or this or that. Um, I might downgrade my lifestyle even a little bit and like go so far as to like, okay, you know what? I can earn half of what I make, work half as long, and take a like simpler job and kind of just like coast, have that cover my expenses and everything else just sort of like happen. Again, probably won't do that because like too neurotic and my ADD would never let me. Um, but to your point, and I think this is the more important thing. It's not really a question, but we're gonna count it as a question. Like we are public facing. Our faces are known.
Our faces
to,
face each other in the live
our,
stream of two people.
to a degree, like our names are known. Like we have a level of public exposure that, like, at least for me, I am fully expecting a knock on the door one day. Like at some point one day, some government office official, whether it's they've passed a law saying you can't self-custody Bitcoin, or it's something simple as like, hey, it's the IRS and we just want to like aggressively audit you because we know you have Bitcoin. So like there are these little things that I am fully preparing for and anticipating, and I think you should as well.
And this is happening at the same time as the fiat systems seem shakier than ever. I mean, it doesn't. That might just be our perspective, like limited perspective. You know, young people, exciting new times, learning new things, but also, I think it's safe to say the America itself is going through some kind of turning, and the Western world at large. And how do you plan for that? And for me, it's like, okay, well, thanks to Bitcoin, we can a lot of us can get serious about jurisdictional arbitrage and maybe choose where we want to work from and where we want to be. I mean, that's not gonna, you can't escape the tax man here, but I guess it's a question of safety and whether this will continue to be the freest country in the world, or whether there aren't better opportunities in privacy elsewhere. The public facing thing is real too. I mean, that's a concern for me. I've had issues with it in the past, despite how small our audience is. So I really like the path of the NIMS here and the people that drop off from Bitcoin. Like I've always said that the Bitcoin influencer cycle is real too, and like the public facing people we saw from 2020 to 2024, a lot of them are probably going to drop off in the next cycle at some point. And I think it's not because they get wrecked or something bad happens to them. I think it's a choice. I don't think humans are meant to have this kind of daily concern for every world affair and coverage, you know, be our own media outlets and just try to solve the whole world's problems every day all at once. It's very exhausting. And it puts you at a lot of risk because any move you make in a public forum divides your audience. But if you have massive success, you'll see even your small audience of like local friends and family who maybe didn't listen to your advice. I know a lot of my friends that kind of laughed and think was like super silly for quitting my job and pursuing Bitcoin. I'm starting to get the text like, yo, how's it going? This Bitcoin thing looks like it's doing well. And it's just like, yeah, man, choose your own adventure. But I don't know. Yeah, I think for safety and privacy, that's the way for me. I mean, I don't really have much of a desire to be like a public facing Bitcoiner forever. But the flip side of that is you can do a lot of good. with that energy. And the problem that I'm seeing is I see a lot of people who maybe got big in 2020 and beyond, basically riding the bull market wave. Like, I don't know if they realize it, but their success is not entirely due to them being like talented, especially insightful individuals. It's more just like a growth factor of the space at whole. And if they don't pivot, change their thesis, or bring something new to offer in the way of value to their audiences and to the market, they quickly become pretty out of touch and kind of irreverent and irrelevant, excuse me. And then you kind of watch them go through a really weird public existential crisis, the most hilarious of which to watch is probably BitBoy at this point. The downfall of BitBoy has just been divine entertainment. But there are many, many others, and Bitcoiners too. Yeah, that's that. So everything moves in cycles. It's just the law of conservation of mass and energy, So we have, I don't know, we have a few months here to regroup before things really hit the fan and get crazy. And it's like, if you don't have systems in place to capture the upside of Bitcoin, but also the cultural upside and all the new eyeballs that are coming to be on us, and if you're not in a position to do the most good at that point, you kind of miss it. It's really hard to play catch up when the price is ripping, $5,000 a day. That's not the time to make a plan. The plan was, the past year and, maybe the coming 6 months, and then you're off to the races, dude. And it begins.
Yeah. I think there's one mini victory laps going on right now, and it's the first inning still. First quarter, first round, whatever your sport is.
Oh, we got a question. The Grinder asks, is this jealousy kicking in for your friends or self-disappointment of not having listened to you? It's probably neither of those. I don't think people get people aren't able to look at things like that and just say, oh, I was wrong. I should have got this lower. Nor do we really need them to. I think their curiosity is, okay, maybe I can still get involved in this thing. So they just want help getting set up for the most part. And they're just interested in like what methods have worked for you. So I love helping those people and those businesses. That's probably mostly what I would do with my time. If I had, if I was completely self-sovereign, I would just onboard people and try to help them secure their privacy and their money as best they can.
Yeah, I mean, I think the people who regret are not people who missed out last cycle. It's too early for that, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people who regret are the people who had a chance 10 years ago, who had a chance 8 years ago to buy some Bitcoin. Like my uncle family, like my dad's college roommate, who I call uncle, his son is 7 years younger than me. And like he was in high school when Bitcoin first started out. And so he was like, kind of had his finger on the pulse a little bit, but you're in high school.
Nice.
You don't have any money. So he didn't end up buying any Bitcoin, but like he literally went to his dad and he was like, can you give me $100? I want to buy some Bitcoin. He's like, what the fuck is this? Like, whoa. This is like sub $1 Bitcoin, like way back.
Whoa. Wow.
And like he goes to, like my uncle goes to my dad and they start talking about it. And what my dad says is, my dad's like, this actually doesn't sound like a bad idea. I think you should give him $100. And
Nice.
Never did. And like to this day, my uncle
never did it. $100.
$100 back then. And like even now,
Bitcoin.
he's like, yeah, it's too late. I wish I'd not be working right now if I'd done that. But like those are the people who regret. the people from the last like 5 years, they're not going to regret for like another 10 years. Does that make sense? Like the
Yeah, but
appreciation from like what they could have gotten to like where it is now is not painful enough until they have realization that it literally would have been like done. You're done working because the amount Bitcoin is appreciating now is at a
Mhm.
faster rate than how much you make in a single year, in a single month, in a single day.
there's kind of two changes that ideally happen to people that are entering this space. Like one is, yeah, of course, you could have the best time to get in was yesterday, yesteryear. But if that regret doesn't turn into some kind of like impetus for action and you're not going to change any of the behaviors and actually look in and learn about this thing, even if it's purely for that fiat minded, like the gains, you know, even if you entirely intend to sell at 100K, like what happens is you start to get involved, and best case scenario, your mindset shifts where you realize, well, this is more than just purchasing power. I don't know about you, but the important parts of Bitcoin are not exactly the purchasing power. It's the self sovereignty that we talk about every day, and it's just the freedom of choice, and you can extend that to companies in this space as well. We keep talking about Ocean; they're really on this PR campaign to they call it filter. But they've switched to one of my biggest pet peeves. Their messaging, the messaging from Ocean has switched to they're only including real or true Bitcoin transactions. It's a total no true Scotsman argument that portrays Nakamoto consensus. But it's their, freedom to do that. I'll probably still point my hash power at Ocean just because I want to support them. But yeah, I'm interested to see what the market thinks
should,
about them.
exactly. The market should make these decisions though. And if it shouldn't be up to individuals up in arms on Twitter to like dictate what is right and what is
Right.
wrong. Because that is the slippery slope that our
But those are the
current society
signals,
used.
right? To some extent. Aside from sheer hash power, I mean, some of this feedback is like these are interesting arguments. But it's
Is
very
it?
clear to me.
It's like
Go
no,
ahead.
this is where I disagree because like there's always action that can be taken that is separate from like the rhetoric that's being said. And the only reason I can sort of think through this is the book size wars is fresh in my head. But like there's a lot of rhetoric that miners were going to go in one direction. And then ultimately when the day came, they did not. And the market kind of dictated that. And the action of these people actually determined what was going to happen going forward. All of the talking on Twitter, all of the posts, all of that shit, absolutely irrelevant. It was actually all noise, in my opinion. And the only signal was what direction did miners point there? Or what block structure, if you will, or I don't, I'm blanking on how to properly phrase this, but like essentially which blockchain do they want to be a part of going forward? That was the signal. Everything else was the noise, in my opinion. And I think we're kind of getting to that point again where everyone can do whatever they want. But if the market takes that Ocean somehow become the 3 largest mining pool in the world, that there was no signal in that conversation whatsoever.
What's interesting is since the last time we've talked, despite our, many people's concerns, and they're basically talking about fee dynamics and why would people point their hash power somewhere where they're going to get potentially less bang for their buck. Their hash rate's doubled since that time. They're at 400 and 452 petahashes per second. They found 2 blocks. Things are going well, but it's been a short amount of time, so we'll see what happens. I mean, the best thing is I'm just happy we're looking at mining differently and trying to decentralize it, even from a startup point of view. I mean, time will go to show whether raising to do this was the right move, because now you have I think like $6.5 million nut to cover. That's going to take some time. But I hope it encourages people to submit their own block templates and start mining from home. It certainly inspired me. I can't wait to begin that journey. I'm definitely going to document it and share it here. But yeah, man. What do you think about? We've covered this a little bit, but is there a scenario? I mean, you can definitely afford a couple miners at this point. The source of power is the hard part. But if you ever thought about, I have my own thoughts about this, but like hosted mining or renting rack space somewhere, or with the coming halving, is this just kind of out of the question for you? You're just that's money better spent on just raw Bitcoin at this point.
I probably would prefer to just stack quietly, humbly. I've done a lot of math on like what the upfront costs are, and then theoretically what the remaining costs would look like, and then how long it would take to theoretically be made just whole on that investment. And
Yeah.
for me personally, it just didn't feel like it would be the best use of my resources.
Yeah, it takes years to pay it off. I mean, longer and or never. Yeah, it's an interesting question individuals have to make. But I think we'll see more people at least trying it and dipping into the space. Like I'm getting into it not really for financial gain. Like, yeah, there's a little bit of excess power. It'd be nice to monetize, but I just want to learn how this works because I don't like the idea of the future of Bitcoin's hash rate being captured between like 3 or 4 or 5, even 10 pools. Like that's horrifying to me in, relatively centralized jurisdictions that have to follow, the laws and best practices of the land. No, I'd rather see that hash power at home. I'd rather see it in like microgrids in Africa. I'd rather see it harness renewables at a small scale, but everywhere all at once. So I guess my question is, how can we contribute to that? I don't know. Let us know in the comments. I'm curious if there's a lot of plebs that are getting interested in mining or have this past cycle. We're a little late to the party here, but it's never too late. Obviously I'm really excited for what Block is going to come up with too.
Yeah, I do think there is just people need to take like an honest look at what they want to and are able to contribute, because I think there's a little bit too much almost euphoria and excitement that leads people to like make certain decisions that they will later regret. And if you kind of just slow down a little bit,
yeah. Well, this is the fun part. You have to weigh risk. This is a game. It's a total game, and it could be taken away from us. John Carvalho asked an interesting question this morning. Do Bitcoiners ever consider undoing features? Taproot. This is actually an example of something I have used, but I don't. It doesn't feel very important to me right now. And the undoing of that, I think if I understand how inscriptions work, would take those off the table. But this other problem of trying to censor arbitrary data, like arbitrary data has been put on the blockchain forever. And playing God in terms of censorship, transaction filtering or censorship, as you want to call it. Basically, the argument that I heard from Ocean, I completely disagreed with. They said, if it's not coming from the state, it's not censorship. That's just on its face false, right? I mean, look at Twitter. It's not, they censor people all the time. Sometimes they're mandated to by the state, maybe in the past more than now, but you'll still get taken down if you say the wrong things. What censorship is at this point it's basically a virtual show of aggression and might and it's like who has the biggest stick in the land, deciding who can or can't transact or speak or send, XYZ communication. And we have the tools to route around these things, but the job is not done. It's nowhere near done, because most people don't recognize the problem. I mean, most people, I think their lips are moving while they watch television, and they still believe that is the source of truth. So yeah, we have a lot of work to do. I don't know why necessarily we task ourselves to do it, but it does feel like a pretty noble noble quest kind of for human destiny here, to try to change the course of things and to try to take away the asymmetric power that the states hold over us, that they didn't take by force, dude. We gave it to them day by day, data point by data point. We gave them all of our power to move freely in this world and to communicate. And a lot of that infrastructure is captured. And that's what this is really about for me. It's taking it back, to allow user choice. The best opportunity is basically like choose your own adventure for humans, and that's not going to be possible if we continue in the direction that we've been headed for decades now. Other questions for today?
Yes. Okay. I really like this one, and there's a cop out answer which I believe I'm going to get out of Alex. I can troll him and make fun of him for it. And then there's a real answer to this, but I think this is a perfect question. Number 100 on Bitcoin Q&A. Are there developments that could derail Bitcoin's current momentum?
When you say developments, do you mean event-driven developments, or do you mean actual development on Bitcoin?
It could be anything. It could be regulatory, it could be technical, it could be societal, economic.
Yeah, sure. The ETF gets rejected. That's it doesn't have to happen. The laws around Bitcoin, change, and they will change. The regulations around mining change, making it even more adversarial for people abroad or here in the States. I think the on ramps and off ramps, the stranglehold that the governments have on them, I think it only gets tighter, and so we need to respond with more innovation and more optionality for people. And I'm not like a big let's return Bitcoin to this core use case of only peer to peer, and if you don't self custody, you're not a Bitcoiner. Like, it's a spectrum, but I would like to see as many people as possible shift to at least understanding that alternative, just to provide them with the most choices and basically safety and anonymity as possible, or pseudonymity. Could something derail? But something inevitably will, man. Something. I mean, think about there weren't that many people that were calling out or predicting as FTX was on the rise, purchasing more and more businesses, kind of growing. Nobody quite knew why. Effective altruists bribing their way onto the world stage. Look, that took us by surprise. Terra Luna collapse, no surprise, tanked the market. I don't see the price action though as much of an impediment. Like, if Bitcoin went back to 15K from here, might not be such a bad thing, man, for us to reconsider our approach. Or are you talking strictly about something that will, destroy the market momentum?
Like all these are valid. I would even go so far as, the the thing that concerned me the most are the regulatory tax hurdles. And I know people are like, oh, Bitcoin doesn't care, like go and ban Bitcoin. You can make it Bitcoin really, really hard to use. And if you make it really hard to use, people won't use it. Like it's very
To be
it
fair, it's
sounds
already
almost,
pretty fucking hard to use
and look at how
for
much
the
global
average
adoption
person.
is at right now. Like you see where I'm kind of alluding to and getting to. It's like if all of our it, twofold. If I want to stay on the regulatory side first, but like if they continuously pass different legislations that just every time you send Bitcoin internally, you have to report it. You don't have to tax, but it has to be reported, or like just little nuanced things that start to make it a headache to have hold Bitcoin, all the way down to you have to pay a tax for every day you store your Bitcoin. Like stupid out of the box things that like are not unrealistic.
If they move too much, if they choke too much, they're going to get an outsized response, though. I mean, this is across the board in our culture. I think more and more it's harder for the government to get away with like sweeping censorship and undue regulation. And so I'm interested to see as the rise of the sort of self-sovereigns continues, what happens with the state and the regulatory apparatus, and how can we kind of take back ground that's been lost over the last few decades there. And I don't think it's by way of voting. I think it's, you know, peaceful or unpeaceful non-compliance and continuing to build. And I don't know. I think they're doing a decent job at striking fear into the hearts of developers. I mean, I have a lot of friends who can't come to the United States just for fear of having worked on Bitcoin, worked on privacy tools or kind of self-sovereignty tools such as coin joining mechanisms. And it's hard to see, but we need those people, and we actually need more of them. Yeah, don't know if that answers your question, but it's a good question, man. Yeah, there's always trade-offs. There's always risks. There's no perfect solutions here. And as Bitcoin grows in price, fortunately or unfortunately, or both, you get increased attention to it. But I don't think the incentives are such, and without drastic change will ever be such, that someone's going to take seriously, put a plot and put the capital forward to try to change or destroy it. I mean, the costs are insane, but the costs socially, that's kind of their only attack vector, is on ramps, off ramps, psyops, and price. It wouldn't shock me at all to see a complete repeat, basically, of FTX and price manipulation that way. Obviously, if the spot ETF gets approved, it's going to make those instruments harder on some level. But I'm curious if there are other basically financial instruments that you see as potential grounds for failure that could collapse. I mean, what's the future? A lot of people, I really don't know enough about it, but you hear a lot of questions in Tether's direction and for other stable coins. I mean, do you have any thoughts about that?
I think the stable coins are almost like a step that we have to take. And I am of the camp that very flatly and firmly believes like the issuance of stable coins is no different in my mind than the issuance of a fiat currency. And while they may be, you know, some are more algorithmically tied and transparent about what backs these stable coins, ultimately I think it's a bridge between where we are today and where we're trying to go, more than it is the long-term viable solution. You have like a shit eating grin smirk on your face?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the grinders crap picking me up today. We got a ton of comments today. Also, I love all this participation in the chat, guys, on Zap That Stream. But yeah, he says one of the best stunts that the market pulled this year was convincing people that we're in a bear market. Well, the value casually increased 150% on the year. And what made me laugh is like, yeah, dude, we've been in a bull market for like, I mean, you'll get people, you got the Rizzes of the world out there, and me too, who are just like, look, the real bull market, or what we're talking about in bull market is like kind of this feeling we've had this week, but it's sustained for months. It happens every cycle. I don't think that really takes off, and achieving a new all-time high. That's the other event, but that doesn't have to happen. It would be hilarious to me, and the reason I was laughing if this was actually the top and this is all we got this cycle, is just a 44K, and then Bitcoin falls back into niche interests. It's kind of wild to me to see. I don't know if you caught, I don't know if it was Squawk Box. I think it was a CNBC program yesterday where the analyst was just arguing with the other one, like, you wouldn't be a believer at 100K. And first of all, the idea of Bitcoin believers is hilarious to me. It's so counter productive, but it's also, despite many plebs treating it as a religion and acting as though it was kind of a purity contest and a belief, for me it's not a belief at all. Like, I've always tried to be honest, especially with my family, who probably criticized me the most about Bitcoin. It's not a belief. Like, I take the actions I take because I've, in proportion to what I've verified about the protocol and what I've learned from studying it and using it. It's not a belief. I have a hope that, the price will go nuts and we'll all be kind of wealthy and happy to choose our own venture and do what we want for a living. But like, that's kind of already happened. Like, it's just Bitcoin's not a matter of belief. If you operate in Bitcoin as though it was a belief, you're like, what's the point of self-custodying? It's not a belief alone that prompted me to put 100% of my net worth into Bitcoin years and years ago, and to just hold on to that. No, it's conviction, which is born out of a different place. Beliefs come out of almost a desperate need. Like, knowing is a different thing, and in Bitcoin we can know. I would say the opposite is true. Like, a lot of people out there seem to be fiat believers without any underlying understanding of how ruggable they are, how the system operates, how much danger they're in of being disenfranchised. And if that if that mechanism is there for you to be disenfranchised, let's say you're like some kind of like Ethereum retard or something. That's a belief, dude. You're waking up every day just hoping the Ethereum Foundation doesn't pivot again and drop a nuke on this protocol and it all falls into shambles. That's a belief, because you have no control and you have no verification as to like what the fuck's going on. Bitcoin magically escaped all that. Maybe I should avoid using the word magically, but it's still unreal to me that the protocol operates as transparently as it does, and that you can verify just every line of the code yourself. So yeah, definitely not a belief, definitely not a religion, definitely not a cult. There's no leader giving us directions. But it's kind of that problem with centralized media and like social media platforms now, where it's like the loudest voices tend to be a little bit detached from like what is the actual essence of this thing. You know what I mean? Like, the loudest people on Twitter, their incentives to say things that are untrue are very high, and their incentives to attack others and play value games you can't play these status value games without bringing other people down. And to me, that's not a very productive use of time. Like, notice while I might be kind of critical or like have questions about what Ocean's going to do, I would never get on here and be like, fuck those people. This is an attack on Bitcoin. Like, you shouldn't use that pool. No, it's like, what's useful? Like, I don't know, like questions. You have to have the ability to ask questions without it being considered an attack. And trying to, I don't know, just like question the nature of these things without calling people out. Like, to me, it's about assuming the best intent in people, even if their history gives you otherwise, like a reason to believe otherwise. I'm not talking about absolute scammers, but like maybe Luke, for example, has done things throughout the history of Bitcoin. I kind of agree with Jack's assessment. Like, I believe he does what's in his, not what's in his best interest, but what he believes is in the best interest of Bitcoin. That's a good actor to me, even if I disagree with the outcome. That's someone who's trying, you know? So I think, I guess, to wrap up the point succinctly, I think the beauty of Nostr is these incentives aren't there. You're not going to get very far with the Nostr community by calling out people, by dragging people's names through the mud, and by relentless attack on people whose views are different than yours. There's just not room for that. And there's no, at least right now, there's no like algorithmic interests in that. Like, right now, the interests of you using Nostr are purely kind of self-driven. I think the payoff for a lot of people isn't quite there. They don't understand why they would like to use it. I posted something yesterday. It's like, we use it because it's a nice environment without censorship. And, it's the meme of like the stern eyes, just like, what do you mean? It's like, no, that's it. That's enough. That's enough for me. People are nice there. They're honest. If they do have something critical of you to say, the community is going to hold them responsible to bring a little bit of evidence and a little bit more thought to their criticisms than somewhere on Twitter, where you can just, you could send out blatant fake news or attacks on people for attention. It becomes this kind of like political social game of like, who has the loudest, funniest, most interesting negativity to spew today. I don't know. I'm not about that. Actually, one thing I want to add, if Bitcoin hits, even half of the predictions that people are making, which is like, seems to be a 5 or 10x this cycle across the board, is what people are hoping for. So of course, that's absolutely what it's not going to do. But if it were, the first thing I would do and absolutely recommend to people is get the fuck off of Twitter. Like, even just telling that to myself, dude, it's so unhealthy. It's so unhealthy.
Yeah, I mean, again, I cannot emphasize this enough, but like, we sometimes just like forget what needs to happen in order for, certain realities that we're fantasizing about to come true. So don't lose sight of that.
Absolutely. Do we have a final question to close out the day? Or if anyone in the chat has something, feel free to send it up. I also love this comparison. They're calling Bitcoin not a photo album. Bitcoin is not a photo album. Don't use it to store your pictures. Yeah, I agree with that. That's not important to me. But I also agree that I'm not here to tell you what Bitcoin's for. You use your Bitcoin however the fuck you want. If it's in within Nakamoto consensus, hopefully, at least for now, you're still going to get included in a block and your transaction is valid. Editorial opinions are irrelevant. I don't care what people use their Bitcoin for. you know, and I think we're going to grow past this. Like Bitcoin never really shook. There's still people that get into Bitcoin today that go on huge fucking podcasts and shows and the news and talk about the early days of Bitcoin as if its only use case then was like money laundering and drug smuggling and Silk Road. It's like, hey, actually, no, this sovereign, this truly, I guess I shouldn't say truly. This instrument's been useful for things far beyond that since its inception, in terms of separating money from state. Like, it's an important point to drive home. Money's been separate from state for almost like 14 years. The question is, are you using it? And then my question is, just out of interest, like, how are you using it and how does the culture choose to use it? Yeah, from there, final thoughts or questions, Q?
No, I think that's a great place for us to wrap for today.
Sweet. Thanks for joining us, guys. Enjoy the ride here, and hold on to your stack and keep joining us on the Nostr side of things. We love seeing people on Zap.stream and continue to be the most fun daily show on Zap.stream. So we'll see you